For the first time since week 4, all 32 NFL teams will play this week in what is shaping up to be a fantastic week 13. And today we're going to be looking ahead to all of the action. It's actually fascinating how similarly built these two teams are. I think we should make for a great game of football. The game in week 1 admittedly wasn't high scoring, but it was a great game to watch. And it's a hardly surprise why Green Bay haven't mirrored Detroit lately, because they've beaten the crap out of them.
I think they're a genuine force to be reckoned with going into the playoffs. A couple of weeks ago, just after Lamar returned, it was I got them straight up. I think I had them 17th. I got them straight up into 11th range. And now, if I was to pair them against any team currently in the playoffs, I think I'd have them favourites.
This Bears team has evolved so much in those 9 weeks since we last saw them on prime time. Their investment on both lines, the defensive line, offensive line, has really started to show, and both lines are playing really well now. And you're really starting to see Ben Johnson's stamp on this team with their run game and the innovative play calling as well. This looks like Detroit of years gone by, which is brilliant for them. That's exactly what you hired Ben Johnson for. And Dennis Allen's defense is playing super tough.
Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
The holiday season is finally upon us now, as Thanksgiving and Black Friday football is here. It is truly now the run-up to Christmas. For the first time since week 4, all 32 NFL teams will play this week in what is shaping up to be a fantastic week 13. And today you're going to be looking ahead to all of the action. You're listening to the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, the main show from the Full 10 Yards podcast network. I am today's host, Sam Moores, and this is your home for British commentary on the NFL. Our network ranges from team-specific podcasts to written content on our website. There's also our weekly deep dive on everything happening across the league as well, and there's also updates on social media. If you enjoy the show, please make sure to subscribe on your preferred platform and leave us a review. It really does help us reach more NFL fans, both in the UK and across the pond. Join me to talk about a Thanksgiving slate, which is one of the best we've seen in a long time, perhaps the best I've ever seen, is Full 10 Yards writer Charlie Grace. Welcome back to the show, Charlie. We've got the 7-win divisional rival Packers and Lions facing off. The Chiefs are looking to move back into the playoff picture. The Cowboys are coming off their comeback win over the Super Bowl champions. We've got the return of Joe Burrow as well. He's going up against his old foe Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. I think it's fair to say the NFL has smashed the scheduling here, right?
Yeah, it's a good slate. I saw it as a good looking slate later on as well. The Ravens were wearing those purple helmets as well. I saw a video of Lamar Jackson in practice yesterday, and they're wearing those kind of dark purple, I suppose, isn't it?
With the front on logo, which is really cool.
Yeah, and the gold face mask, which is always nice under the lights. And it will be a decent game for a little bit if Joe Burrow's in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about that game as well is you've got the Bengals white, tiger uniforms as well. So there's a really great uniform matchup there, which is pretty awesome.
White helmets as well.
Yeah, white helmets as well.
Yeah.
We'll also be looking ahead to the Black Friday game between the Eagles and the Bears, both of whom sit at 8-3 on the season and lead their respective divisions. And before that, we'll finish the podcast by predicting the rest of the Week 13 games against the spread. There are 3 more games between teams sitting at least 500 or above on Sunday, which again, it goes all the way through the weekend. It's also rivalry week in college football as well. You've got all the big rivalries like Ohio State, Michigan this week as well. So you have 5 fun football days ahead of us. Let's get into that bumper episode by where the action always begins, Ford Field in Detroit, which is a tradition dating back to 1934. This game is huge. If the Lions lose this game, they're in a bit of bother. They've already lost to Green Bay this season. They've lost at home to Minnesota too. Lose this one, they go to 1-3 in the division. And there'll probably be multiple games outside the playoffs, despite having the third highest points differential in the entire NFC. I mean, firstly, what a conference the NFC is this year, and and secondly, what a task on their hands of two division games still to come, and a date of the Rams in week 15. Do you think the Lions are in danger, or do you expect them to go on a roll from here?
Um, if they lose, they're certainly in danger because you look at their upcoming schedule after this. They play Dallas, um, who themselves could gain some momentum, depending on what happens this week. Then they've got to go to the Rams, who look like perennial one seeds in the NFC. Um, then week 16, you play Pittsburgh, who might have something to play for at that point. Um, and then you've got two road divisional games, week 17 and 18, at the Vikings and at the Bears. And the Bears could have the 3 seed to play for, the 3 or 4 seed to play for in that week 18 game, depending on how results go for them and the Packers down the stretch. So you feel like not only, obviously, like you said, is using football terms, it's a bit of a relegation 6-pointer in that you drop this game, you lose another NFC North game. Obviously, already lost to the Packers, lost to the Vikings, so you're 1 and 2 in division at the moment. You drop to 1 and 3, and your last 2 games are on the road. We know that the NFC North's a bit of a gauntlet anyway, and they've not exactly come into a great form either. They're showing some worrying signs. They needed Jameer Gibbs to have an ungodly game against the Giants, who are particularly poor to even get anywhere close. So I think there's definitely big concerns about the Lions if they drop this game. And if they win this game, I still have, unless it's a fairly comprehensive blowout, I probably still have more questions than answers about them going down the stretch.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because if you would have told Lions fans you'd be 3 games over 500 with the injuries that they've had this year, obviously, basically the entire secondary's been out at some point this year. You've lost Sam Porter for the season, again, a big part of that offense. If you would have told them that you'd be 3 games above 500, they'd be like, oh yeah, with all those injuries, they'd be like, oh yeah, brilliant, great season. But really, because of the quality in the NFC, that they are in danger at the level, which is crazy. Of course, they're currently the 8 seed, so just out of the playoffs, but they actually have a 73% chance of making the playoffs right now, which is higher than Chicago, who are, of course, the 3 seed currently and leave the NFC North. If the Lions win this game, the likelihood goes up to 86%, and if they lose it, it goes down to 59%. So there's a huge swing here with Detroit, and it's an interesting one. This is a huge game for them because they've played well both sides of the ball. It's been a good product from the Lions. They've just struggled to get over the hump a couple of times. And the teams are starting to really figure out Jared Goff, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. As for the Packers, a win for them would push their percentage to a whopping 94%. So this is a huge game for Green Bay. Here, what do you make of the Packers at the moment?
They're one of those interesting teams where, on paper, you look at it and you're like, the Packers always a tough game. If you're on the road going into Lambert, you're always going to be the underdogs. But it's difficult right now to be convinced by this offense. I think more so than anything. Jordan Love last year kind of proved he's an NFL quarterback, but I think his progression has stagnated. He's plateaued a little bit progressively this year. Josh Jacobs, he's a legit NFL running back. Yeah, this worry that a couple of weeks ago, receivers just aren't convincing. Outside Jaden Reed, who, as far as I'm aware, still out injured. So there's not a lot on this offense that is convincing right now. And I think as good as their defense is, with Micah Parsons that they had in the offseason. I'm not wholly convinced on them. They're one of those teams like most years where the Pittsburgh Steelers, where you probably penciled in for the playoffs. A bit unlike the Steelers recently, you could probably pencil them in to make at least a divisional round. But then there's a huge swing on whether they get home field advantage or not as to whether they go far in the playoffs or one and done.
Yeah.
And I don't feel any differently about them this year.
It's an interesting one because I think the receivers are bad. It's a bad situation. None of them are reliable. They're also all really injury prone. You never know who's gonna be the guy week to week. I think that is holding back Jordan Love a little bit, but he himself, if you actually look at the data, he himself is playing really, really well. He actually he leads all quarterbacks in EPA per play, so he's added into this team. It's just the receivers aren't there. Or they've been hurt by injuries at the position all season. Obviously, Tucker Craft's a big factor of that team, and now he's gone. He's been elite in the red zone. He's actually leading the league in red zone efficiency as well. He's the second best play action quarterback behind Jared Goff this year. I actually think he's been good. It's been the issue that they've had an unreliable passing game, and I just look at it thinking, imagine if they brought Devontae Adams back on the 1 year deal. They could have paid him what the Rams paid him. Imagine this Packers team with Devontae Adams right now. The Rams aren't paying him that much. He's a free agent. I just feel like that's a bit of a failure on Green Bay's part, because if Jordan Love had that number one receiver, this team could be the best team in the NFC. I don't think it is right now. Just because they're so unreliable on offense, to be honest with you. I think what it shows is, I mentioned the play action. It shows how much they rely on their run game, and for the Lions as well. It's two teams that like to run the ball loads and like to open up the play action off of that. And it sounds like great news for the Packers that Josh Jacobs might be back in this game after missing the last week. Obviously, Emmanuel Wilson actually looked quite good last week, over 100 yards. But I think really for these two teams, it's like with injuries, they're going to get healthier down the stretch, which is good for them. It's about getting to the playoffs and seeing what happens. And it's actually fascinating how similarly built these two teams are. I think we should make for a great game of football. The game in week one, admittedly, it wasn't high scoring, but it was a great game to watch. And it's a hardly surprise why Green Bay have mirrored Detroit lately, because they've beaten the crap out of them. Dan Campbell was beating the crap out of Matt LaFleur ever since that time where they knocked the Packers out of playoff contention in Aaron Rodgers' last game on that Sunday Night Football game. Since then, Detroit has led the series 6-1 heading into this year, but in week one, the Packers added a second win. It's obviously 2 wins in 8 games there. They bullied the Lions, winning 27-13 in what was obviously Micah Parsons' first game as a Packer. And if I'm being honest, I don't think the Lions have truly recovered from that game, because the Packers put out a blueprint that day. They pressured Jared Goff 16 times. They just went hamming on them. And obviously the Lions had their starting offensive line there, and offensive line has been pretty good all season. But teams are just committing to pressuring Jared Goff. He was brought down 5 times that game on the 16 pressures. And do you know who else has produced the pressure? That much pressure on Jared Goff this season? Oh, only the Eagles, the Vikings, and the Bucks in recent weeks. All three have basically matched the same game plan, and Detroit has only won one of those games. And the Giants tried to do the same thing last week as well. And again, they clearly did get to Goff again, and they had to rely on Jahmyr Gibbs, as you mentioned. They've obviously taken the Lions to overtime. Like, that for me is a thing to watch this game. Is like, if they can get pressure on Jared Goff again, like that game against Philadelphia is probably one of the worst games I've seen him play. That is the thing to watch in this game for me, because I think there is a blueprint there, and I don't know if Dan Campbell is good enough a play caller to try and mask that. So yeah, that's something to watch, certainly. All right, let's go on to predicting this one now. As it stands, the Lions are 2.5 point favourites in this game, which is pretty much the home field advantage. So as I said, these two teams are built the same. They're pretty much the same ability. So the bookies feel there is pretty much nothing separating these two teams. Which way are you going in predicting here?
one of those tough things where it feels like out by a divisional game. I would tend to leave him. Um, and I think that slightly diminishes slightly with Detroit being indoors. Um, I think there's not quite as much home field advantage, but I think coming off a short week, both teams, you know, Green Bay had a pretty easy run of it against the Vikings. Detroit had had to go to overtime against the Giants, but it was a pretty swift overtime win in the end. With Gibbs breaking off the long play. So I think I'm just gonna have to go Detroit just because of the home field advantage more than anything. And I think Goff struggles when he plays good defense because like that's pretty only put up 9 points against the Eagles, lost against the Vikings, lost against the Chiefs, lost like you said in week one against the Packers. Like when they play a good defense, they do struggle. And I think it will be a very tight game. But I think I'm just going to side with the Lions, and I think I'm going to back their home field advantage more than anything. But I'm not confident in that prediction.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also think they need it more. They need it more, and I think that's the thing here. Like the Green Bay lose this game, they're probably still a playoff team because of the schedule they got coming up, and the fact that they've obviously got the extra half a game over the Lions. Anyway, the Lions need this game, so I'm going to go for them. But again, I agree with you. I'm not confident. I think it will literally be a coin flip as to who wins this game. All right, let's move on to the second game now, which will feature two teams coming off wins that kept their season alive. The Cowboys will play their 58th Thanksgiving game when they welcome the Kansas City Chiefs to A&T Stadium on Thursday. Obviously, Tim, founder of 14 Yards, will be there, which is really cool for him. Both of these teams, who are on the outside looking in on the playoffs, came back from multiple scores down to knock off two 8-win teams on Sunday, and now have the chance to move closer to the postseason with a win that'll probably be the most viewed regular season game in NFL history. The current biggest ever audience is 42 million viewers, which was set on Thanksgiving Day 3 years ago when Dallas beat the Giants, which broke a 32-year-old record. And obviously, with the Cowboys being America's team, the Chiefs being a team that's reached the last 3 Super Bowls, and a team that has seen viewing figures like soar as a result of the Taylor Swift effect, as well as it's pretty much been a make or break game for both teams. The momentum's for both teams as well. Many are expecting that 3-year record to fall. If any game was going to break the NFL record, it would be this one. And that's because Dallas simply has to win this game to keep the season alive, and the Chiefs can only really afford one loss. And they've got a tough set of defenses coming up as well. So Kansas City really can't afford to drop this game too. You've got two of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league in terms of non-garbage time EPA. You've got a Post Malone halftime show as well. I mean, what more could you want, Charlie?
Yeah, it's going to be a juicy matchup, I think, especially coming into this game both off of two pretty clutch wins. I think that just adds to the narrative a bit, especially with where both teams were kind of, staring down the barrel last week. It felt like both of these teams were on the precipice of falling out of the playoff picture entirely. You'd think KC, if they lost again to Indy, at home, they'd have been 0-6 against teams currently in the playoff picture, 0-5. So they've kind of, not only have they fed the narrative that they can beat current playoff teams, they did so in a rallying fashion in overtime, with their backs against the wall. And Dallas, I mean, I didn't see it coming when I turned it off at half time, 21-zip. I was like, that's game, that's Dallas's season done again. But the Eagles, the 2025 Eagles, always give you a chance. The always took advantage of that. And credit to them. And now, you struggle, especially seeing that this is now a home game for them. You struggle to see where that kind of doesn't swing momentum for them. And that could definitely be a turning point when you look back if this team does end up sneaking into the playoffs. That certainly kind of half time of that game against the Eagles could be seen as a kind of cathartic moment for their season, I think.
Yeah, we'll start by talking about the Chiefs because they're the team with the most riding on this game because there's a huge swing depending on the result. Lose this and their playoff percentage drops to just 47%. And there could be a couple games out of the 7 seed as well, so it's a really tough task that they probably have to win out if they do drop this game. Win it, and they could be just half a game back on the 7 seed. Obviously, the Jags are in that position right now, and then they will have a likelihood of at least 71%, potentially up to 80% if the Chargers lose and etc. For the Chiefs, which is crazy. Yeah, that's a huge swing. Under 50 to up to 80%. Based on this game, obviously last week they finally won a 1-score game after losing their first 5 this season. Their offense struggled for most of the game, but the defense stepped up, forcing the Colts to a scoreless fourth quarter and 4 straight 3-and-outs to finish the game as well. And then Mahomes, give him credit, he produced a field goal tying drive to take it to overtime, a game-winning drive in overtime as well. They also ran the ball well, which is what they've been needing to do for 4 weeks as well. Like this, would you agree with me that this Chiefs team looked like the Chiefs last week for the first time this season?
Yeah, as much as the 2025 Chiefs can look like the peak Chiefs, I think a lot of the Chiefs play last year came down to a lot of variance. I think like they got the lion's share of, like you said, the 1-score game. Like they
11-0.
Yeah, it felt like they won moments. Like they a tip ball would fall to a Chiefs defender and they'd pick it off, or you'd get the fumble and the ball would bounce your way. Whereas this year that variance has kind of flipped and they're on the wrong side of that. But I think they look as close to what they used to look like last week as they did. We all expect to come out the bye for them to almost, people were kind of like, this is the Chiefs. They'll go on a run. They'll win out down the stretch. And then last week against Denver was a bit of a gut punch for them. I think they looked. That's as a Denver fan, that's the worst that I've seen the Kansas City team look with Mahomes and Cal still in the field since the entire time Mahomes has been there as the starter, and I think it felt like a bit of a change in the guard almost. But then backs against the wall, I think they've obviously gone away. They've done a lot of reflection, and they came out fighting and they came out swinging. And I think that we're going to see a very different Kansas City team now going down the stretch because I feel like everyone's written them off now. Like and it doesn't feel. Not a lot's changed. No play calling things have changed. No, they haven't made us switch up on the O line, or no one's been dropped down in the depth chart. They've just, it's like a switch flick. Everyone's written off, and now all of a sudden they're going to come and they're the target's not on their back anymore. They're the ones that are hunting. And I think they kind of, this iteration of the Chiefs, I think, suits that narrative more than being the team at the top that's being chased.
Well, a bit like 2 years ago when they finished 11-6, and they really had to work for it. And they were lucky they got the Dolphins in the playoffs. They were terrible going into the year. Then in the wild card round, they got the Dolphins who froze in the cold, and they went on a run in the postseason. But they were terrible in the regular season 2 years ago. Obviously, went on to win the Super Bowl. I think we'll be seeing similar here. And I said last week that this team, the way it was playing, is not built for postseason success. They couldn't run the ball. They didn't choose to run the ball. They're passing the ball at 67% of the time, which is not healthy going into the postseason. And the defense wasn't coming up big. Last week was a change. They ran the ball, I think, over 30 times, which again is a real shift. It felt like a postseason game last week, and they play well in that, and I was really impressed with the way that they like wore down the Colts as well. Like they're playing their nemesis Lou Anarumo, who's had obviously a good record. Facing Mahomes and Reed. The Chiefs' adjustments throughout the game were really impressive. I think Spags did a great job in that second half. And yeah, they are certainly going to be hard to stop. I think this game, they win this game. If they beat Houston, then that's because obviously Houston will be such with that defense will be such a tough out. If they win the next two games, the Chiefs are firmly back, and will probably go far in the playoffs. If they struggle in these two games, we'll see. But you said the swing is massive, and they really do need to win this game. While they come into this game as favourites, though, I mean the Cowboys are going to be a difficult opponent. They're undefeated since coming out their bye week. The defense is starting to really find a groove now since adding Quinn and Williams and Logan Wilson, and they are of course the best passing offense in terms of yards per game. It is the number one pass offense, and they've just beaten the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, as well. Even without Micah Parsons, this team is difficult to beat because they can just simply outscore you, and that's been the thing of the Cowboys all year. I mean, if that defense carries on the form it's been in since the bye week, Dallas have got a shot, haven't they?
100%. I think you look at they're almost like the NFC version of the Bengals, except they've got their quarterback. In that the defense they're not anywhere near as bad as Cincinnati. I don't think they're still not a great defense. I think they rank in kind of the bottom five for most metrics, or at least they did coming out of their game against the Broncos. And when I looked, but Dak Prescott's playing at an incredible level once again this year. The true kind of receiver too that they've missed. To CD Lamb, kind of the legitimate guy on the other side. That if you're double teaming CD, you've got George Pickens on the other side. He's going to win his 1v1 matchup. So they pose more questions for the opposing defense than they have done in previous years. And I think, like you said, even if you catch the defense on a bad day, the offense is just going to outscore you. And I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup with this Chiefs defense that always have a bit of a bend over break attitude. With some of their looks that they give you sometimes. And they were on the verge of breaking against the Colts. They were 21-0 down at one point. I think it was 21-6 down. I think
20-9. It was
20-9.
Yeah.
So they were on the verge of you feel like in that situation you give up another score. You're out of the game. So they reach those points in games where it's like that you're not wholly convinced by them, but either someone will make a play or they'll just get a stop, get the offense to fall back, and the offense can kind of find their groove. But I think, like you said, that last week the change to run the ball has helped that defense massively because they're getting off the field finally, and that'll be something that's interesting to watch with Dallas. And yeah, I started doing my Dallas and then tangents on Cincinnati again. But I think Dallas, from their point of view, like you said, they've got more riding on. I think you said Kansas have more riding on this game, but I think Dallas have a huge amount riding on this game because you look at their schedule coming up. They then go on the road against the Lions. They've got the Chargers in week 16, who again might have things to play for in the playoffs. In a gauntlet that is the NFC, they might even think that they're out of the playoff picture already. They're slightly
that's what I'm
above
thinking.
500, I think, because they've got the tie. But if you
They
are
kept their season alive.
you've got to win this game.
Yeah, they got this season alive last, but realistically, they've only got a 13% chance of getting in the playoffs right now. And if they win this game, it only goes up to about 20%. So it's still a real tough ask for Dallas. And so that's what I mean for the Chiefs. Like that's why I think there's more in it for them because they actually have got a realistic shot of getting in the playoffs. If you know what I mean. Right, let's get on to predicting this game now. The Chiefs are 3.5-point favorites on the road. I'm gonna go with Dallas to come within the spread here. I feel like they can make this a close one. I think the Chiefs probably. I don't know. I think the Chiefs probably will win, but I think it'll be a close game. I think, and also, if the Chiefs do get out to a semi-decent lead, I think Dallas can score points late to at least make this an interesting one in the fourth quarter. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna go for Dallas to come within that spread here. It seems that most people agree with me because 69% of the spread bets this week have been based on the Cowboys to come within that 3.5 points. And 86% of the money placed on spread bets have been on Dallas too. Which way are you going?
Yeah, I think I'd pick them to cover as well. I think it would come down to a late. It'll be a late kind of one-score game kind of thing. You feel like, and it's funny when you used to think about the Chiefs getting into a shootout, you'd back the Chiefs. Whereas I think the Chiefs have got to make this a bit of a gritty game, keep it low scoring, and I think if it was a shootout, I'd back Dallas to win the game more than I would KC. I think, just because of how strong that passing offense is, and I think Dallas behind the sticks. That I think even if they are faced with second, third, and long, I still think I back them to complete the pass. So I think they'll cover the spread. I think I'd back Casey to in a win-loss scenario. I think I'd got back Kansas City given this last week, even down, like we said, 11 points at one point in the game. Slightly different dynamic because they're on the road, but I think you've got to back the Chiefs to win it. But yeah, I'd select Dallas to cover.
Okay, the action on Thursday concludes in Baltimore, where two AFC North rivals will meet for the first time this season as the Ravens host the Bengals. These two teams come into this game in pretty much opposite directions, with the Ravens having won their last 5, teaming above 500 for the first time this season, and into the AFC North lead for the first time this season too, whilst the Bengals have lost their last 4 games, 3 of those by 1 score. While the Bengals lost to the Patriots on Sunday was probably the end of their season, for the fans who obviously suffered 2 4-game losing streaks so far this season, it must feel good to see their franchise quarterback back. And for us, a neutral, we also get to see these 2 quarterbacks battle out once again in prime time as well. Hopefully, Burrow looks really healthy. It sounds like he, might have been, because it sounds like he was ready to go last week. Which is cool. It's funny how this is the worst game of these 4 games, and yet it's still a pretty entertaining game. I saw the 2020 slate pop up in my memories yesterday, and like it was horrible. Obviously, no Black Friday game back then. It was 2 years before then. And then the 2 games before the primetime game included 4 teams with losing records. Dallas and Detroit were terrible, and I think they're playing Washington and Houston. It was like Washington with Alex Smith, and it was a poor Houston team. And then the Ravens Steelers game in the prime time was actually postponed due to COVID and wasn't played until the Wednesday afterwards. So it was a weird season that year. It's crazy how bad some of those games has been in previous years, but they got it right this year. This is brilliant slating. It's a shame about the Bengals lately, because had just a few plays gone differently, they'd probably be playing for something like here. If they had Jamar Chase last week, they probably would have beaten the Patriots. That suspension really hurt the team. Obviously, T. Higgins went out in that game. He's probably not going to play. He's got concussion as well. Obviously, they're getting Chase back. But again, if they had both those guys last week, probably would have beaten New England. Again, they should have beaten the Bears. They got really unlucky there. They should have beaten the Jets as well. They probably should have won both those games, and then they're playing for something. But again, it's the same issues from previous years of this Bengal team, and it does make me wonder if Zach Taylor is coaching for his job. Now, obviously, he's not a Joe Burrow, which will be his sort of defense here. But this defense, again, it's not his domain, but it is supposed to be the worst in NFL history. This Bengals defense, and the same issues are there on offense as well. And you could say some of those issues are down to Duke Tobin, the sort of de facto general manager, which they are. But he's been there for over 25 years. He's obviously like the ownership's guy. He's not going anywhere. So obviously, I think something has to change for the Bengals next year. So while it's probably not smart for Burrow to play the rest of this year, well, the Bengals are paying for nothing. Do you think these final 6 games could act as almost like an audition for Zach Taylor's job?
To a degree, I think there there's always like the thing of like, yeah, the Bengals always like have always started slowly throughout the seasons and they like pick up a head of steam. It's never kind of come in the way of like Burrow coming in now with them 3-8, and it's like, you know um their backs are truly against the wall because they've had the injury in the middle of the year. But I think I wouldn't be surprised to see them win out and finish like 9-8, and it kind of looked like retrospectively when you look back in like 10 years time, you look back at the season, you're like, oh, the Bengals finished 9-8 again. Like they had a pretty steady run through like the early 2020s to like always above 500, kind of around the playoffs. And you kind of forget what it was like for the rest of the season. But I think I'd back Cincy playing Joe Burrow for these last 6 games a lot more than I would say Washington putting Jaden Daniels in. For now, I think there's, like you said, for Zach Taylor, I think he's in a very hot seat right now. I think you could probably fall back on the excuse that he hasn't had Burrow this year, but I think the way they've built that team, the way that they've given out the contracts to Burrow, Chase, Higgins, I think they've handcuffed themselves way too much. And you look at teams that invest in their defense, and they're probably the teams that the correlation between the teams that have the most on the wage bill in terms of defense and the teams that are currently favourites to make the postseason and kind of Super Bowl odds, I think they correlate quite closely. I think the Bengals just missed a step there. I think they mispredicted how the league was going to go kind of back in 2020, 2020 or 2022, sorry, when they started giving out these kind of contracts and forming this roster. And almost making the Super Bowl that early was almost like a red herring for this team, kind of. And then they've misallocated their funds, I think, across the years, and I think this feels like the end of a kind of end of an era for the Bengals. And I think even if they were to win out, I think Zach Taylor, we could quite easily see him fired on, what is it they call the Monday after the postseason?
Black Monday.
Black Monday, yeah. I would not be surprised to wake up and see him fired. And kind of the go into a complete, just because I think that this season's been such an embarrassment for the franchise, given how high their hopes were coming out of that Super Bowl season. Went into Arrowhead, beat the Chiefs, lost the Super Bowl to the Matt Stafford Rams, but that was one of the kind of that was a great team, and they just haven't kicked on since.
Yeah.
And that's not all Zach Taylor's fault, like you said. There's you've got to ask questions of higher up, but if the GM's not going to go anywhere, then the buck falls on the head coach after that. And I think there's nothing riding on this game for the Bengals, and I think you quite easily make the excuse to just sit Joe Burrow for the rest of the year, tank as far as you can, and try and get some blue chip defensive talent on rookie contract.
Well, especially as you've agreed that Trey Hendrickson's not coming back as well. Like,
yeah,
you need defensive talent.
Yeah, I mean, if Trey Hendrickson goes, I probably couldn't name you their best defensive player after that. I don't. I wouldn't know who
No,
that guy would be.
no.
Um,
Probably DJ Turner, their corner. He's had a good season, but
yeah,
it's
but again,
slim on
that's
that.
through the
It's
draft,
slim on that
right?
defense.
Like
Yeah.
picked him up through the draft. So for the long term outlook of your franchise, I think Joe Burrow is the best. You want to play Joe Burrow and say, look, if I had Burrow, I won out down the stretch. We could have been a playoff team. Um, but I think if you look properly under the layers, if you peel back the layers of this side, I think they need a total reset, especially defensively. They need to rebuild that defense because you're not getting anywhere close to a championship with a
Yeah.
defense that's this, almost historically bad.
Yeah, as for the Ravens, it's not been pretty at times on this run for them, especially the last two games. The offensive line has been a problem for them, but yeah, they've found ways to win. They've won 5 in a row now, and the offensive line hasn't really helped to bang up Lamar in the first place. But again, they found a way to win multiple one-score games this season, and part of that is the fact that this defense has massively stepped up. It was horrendous the first half of the season. It's gone from allowing the most points in the NFL through the first couple of weeks to the best scoring defense in the NFL over the past 5 games. And a bit like the Chiefs, I think this team is starting to get back to what we expected them to be in pre-season, where they were top 3 in the Super Bowl odds, and number 3 team in a pre-season power ranking. Now they've won 5 straight, big favourites for the AFC North now. In my opinion, which is crazy because only 4 teams have ever made the playoffs starting 1-5. Only 2 of those won a division. The Ravens looking to become the 5th and 3rd teams to achieve that feat in NFL history. And a win over the Bengals tomorrow night will put them very much on course to do that. Looking at the Athletics Playoff Simulator, Baltimore currently has an 86% chance of making the postseason and an 85% chance of winning the division, again, despite starting 1-5. And the next 2 games are at home against the Bengals and the Steelers. Win those 2 games, it's done. It's 96%. And it is crazy how the AFC North's gone this season because, again, coming into it, you look like 3 real strong contenders, and the Steelers have Aaron Rodgers injuries, all 3 quarterbacks have missed time, and it's just ended up towards the end of the season who's the healthiest, and it's Lamar Jackson. But Baltimore are really hitting their groove now, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look, they won 5 straight, coming out of their bye, and you to the schedule slightly. They had the Dolphins in a bad spot. They played the Vikings, who progressed badly this year, and they played the Browns and the Jets. They're they're hardly playing the cream of the crop, but you've got to beat what's in front of you. And again, this week with the Bengals, divisional game, you win that, you're in a great spot. You go into Pittsburgh, you welcome Pittsburgh into your building with every chance of almost securing a playoff spot in that kind of week 14, which it feels strange to say, after being 1-5, but say they win this week as I think most people would expect, and then beat Pittsburgh. That means they're on a 7-game win streak. They've got coming up after that their last 4 games at Cincy, so you'd slate that up as probably another win. They play the New England Patriots, who rookie QB, great mate, or second year QB, but first year and under variable, kind of looking like the team that they are now, coming into Baltimore on that would be an 8-game win streak by then. I think I'd back Baltimore in that game. And then you're at Green Bay and at Pittsburgh to close out the year. But if you get to that point and you've pretty much already secured a playoff berth, you can look at, do we rest Lamar in week 18 going into Pittsburgh? There's no point putting him out there against that defense. If we've already secured a playoff spot with the injuries that he's had this year. So I think there's every chance that the Ravens win out the rest of the way.
And they're getting healthier as well, that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I think the biggest thing in the start of the year when they were 1-5 wasn't that they were a bad team, it's that they were a banged up team. And they got healthy at the right time. They're kindly. And I think they're a genuine force to be reckoned with going into the playoffs. Um, I did a little power ranking of mine, didn't put it up on the website in the end. A couple of weeks ago, just after Lamar returned, it was like I shot them straight up. I think I had them like 17th. I shot them straight up into like 11th range, and now, yeah, in my mind they'd be sneaking up to kind of 7th, 6th in the AFC. I think if I was to pair them against any team currently in the playoffs, I think I'd have them favourites. I don't think I think they're one of the AFC's strongest teams. Um, and if they do end up getting the home field advantage, I think there's every reason that we could see them go on a run in the postseason.
Yeah, I think if they can somehow avoid Kansas City and Buffalo, I think, that would be great for them. But again, they've lost to both those teams this season. They should have beaten Buffalo. That's crazy. Josh Allen fourth quarter in that game. But yeah, obviously they've got those two teams on film from the start of the season as well. So we'll see what happens there. But that's really been their kryptonite, is getting to the playoffs. It's been an ease for them, and it's going to be an ease for them this year. As well, of course, they come into this game as favourites. They've had by 7.5 points in this game. Which way are you going here?
Yeah, I think I'd probably back Pittsburgh to cover the spread, but AFC North divisional game is going to be tight. It's not going to be a blowout win, but I'd back Baltimore to win today. I just think they're getting healthy at the right time.
Mm.
The Steelers, coming off the back of their loss last week in the fashion that they lost it. You saw the clip of Aaron Rodgers, like, realizing that they're in a legal formation when they snapped the ball, and it's like Mason Rudolph did some hero ball, and it got taken back, and it was gutting to see, because it was quite a fun play as well, just purely because it was Mason Rudolph that made the play, I think, more so than anything. But I think the Steelers are a team a bit like the Bengals that I think ends the offseason needing a full reset, and I think missing out on the playoffs does more for them in their long-term outlook than making the playoffs. But I struggle to see a way that Baltimore, with all their momentum behind them at the moment, doesn't win this game.
Yeah, same. Especially no T Higgins, no Trey Hendrickson. Like the Bengals are banged up. So yeah, give me the Ravens here. And then the Thanksgiving slate concludes with Amazon Prime's Black Friday game, which is one of my favorite games of the year because it has that primetime appeal, but it's much easier time for us here in the UK. It's 8 p.m, which is a lovely time for a game. Following the footsteps of YouTube's Brazil game, this is actually available to be streamed for free worldwide on the Prime Video app, with no Prime membership or subscription required. It's a great game to be able for free as well. It's one I'm certainly looking forward to watching. Battle of 2-8-3 teams, and a pretty big game for both sides. Philadelphia looked to finally be finding a groove, winning 4 straight, including 2 very impressive defensive performances against the Lions and the Packers in prime time ahead of their meeting in Dallas last week. Their pass offense showed huge signs of life in that Dallas game, getting out to a 3-score lead. And I was thinking, oh, here we go. The Eagles are fully back now. But they couldn't run the ball. Saquon Barkley was a non-factor in that game. They couldn't finish the game off because of that, and the Cowboys' defensive line really had their way with them as the game went on, and the Eagles really struggled offensively, obviously going scoreless in the second half, and subsequently blowing a 3-score lead. So this is a spot for them to right those wrongs. Whilst this is a big test for Chicago that they've been waiting for, because they may have 8 wins, but they face the second easiest schedule so far this season, behind the Patriots, and they have yet to beat a team currently sitting within the playoff positions as well. I mean, Amazon certainly picked a good game to give the world for free, haven't they?
Yeah, it'll be a real real feast, especially on it's the day after everyone's gonna the feast for Thanksgiving. But I think we get a great game to watch. You think about the Bears, the amount of one-score games that they've been in this year. In this kind of key run of results, I look back, I go through the last time they won by multiple scores. I think was week 8. against or when they lost by more. The last game they had more was when they lost to the Ravens in week 8, and they've kind of built their this kind of run of momentum on winning tight games, coming up clutch in big spots. Like I said about the Steelers before, I went on my Steelers tangent talking about the Ravens and Bengals. I don't really know why, but I meant to go on my Steelers tangent now with the Mason Rudolph hero ball. Like, in that spot, they just get the rub of the green in that spot with the illegal formation call. You think back to the week before when they beat the Vikings on a last minute field goal as time expired. The Bears that we know lose those games. That kick hits the upright. They don't get that illegal formation call. This isn't the Bears that we're used to watching.
Well, look, that
Even when
game
they were
against
good,
Philadelphia in the
consistently,
playoffs, the Cody Parkey doink.
yeah,
That's what you expect from Chicago.
like that's
Pretty
the
good.
Chicago that we know. That's the Chicago we've watched. And they're different this year, and that's credit, I think, to the culture that Ben Johnson's built, but also, this roster that they built is a good roster. They've got someone on both sides of the ball, and they're coming into a game against the Super Bowl champions, and you're like, they've got a shot. They could come out of this game with a win. Whether they do or not is a different question. I think going into the link is difficult. With the run the Eagles defense has been on, particularly, I think adds an extra dynamic to that. I think this is probably the best defense that the Bears have played all year. But they've come out of tight spots before, and I don't see a reason why they can do it again.
Yeah, it's weird with them because Ollie made this point to me last week. Have you ever seen a team 5 wins above 500 that has a negative point differential? It's crazy.
Yeah,
That's how many one-score games they've won. I mean, it's a huge game for Caleb Williams as well because a lot of people won't get to see him because obviously the Bears haven't been on primetime much, and on Sunday most people will be watching other teams or their team. This is our first time seeing him in primetime since week 6. And only our second time seeing him in prime time since week 1. Obviously, that game against JJ McCarthy and the Vikings in week 1. And this Bears team has evolved so much in those 9 weeks since we last saw them on prime time. Their investment on both lines, the defensive line, offensive line, has really started to show, and both lines are playing really well now. And you're really starting to see like Ben Johnson's stamp on this team with their run game and the innovative play calling as well. This looks like Detroit of years gone by, which is brilliant for them. That's exactly what you hired Ben Johnson for, and Dennis Allen's defense is playing super tough, despite all the injuries they've had to that unit as well. So I think they can make things difficult for Philly in that aspect because Philly can't run a ball, So and again, they have been able to stop the run, but if Chicago can get their Ben Johnson stuff going, they're going to be a problem for Philadelphia, I think, in that aspect. I think, and as for Philly, I mean, again, I said this to Ollie last week. I think it's crazy we're talking about the Eagles being vulnerable in a team that has gone, the Super Bowl champions, that has gone 6-2 against teams 500 and above. Only the Rams have a better record than that. They've had a really tough schedule, and they're here at 8-3, and it was still doubting this Philadelphia Eagles team. It's like, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't really know why it is. It kind of, I guess they're slightly less convincing on both sides of the ball than they were last year, right?
I guess also all
They're
the
not.
noise coming out the building, like all the AJ Brown and Hurts stuff, is just carried on, and it's like that's a big factor, I think.
Yeah, but I feel like people are lower on them this year, coming off winning a Super Bowl and having it, like you said, the 6-2 record than they were the year like when there was question marks over Hurts, and they were like, they didn't have any rings to show for it. Like,
Well, exactly. It's when
there's
they
more
went,
doubt over them that year than there
yeah.
is this year.
were 11-1 in that similar. They kept beating good teams at 11-1 and then completely collapsed in the postseason. Obviously, lost to the Bucks. I think people got a similar vibe about the Eagles this year as they did then. Whereas last year, obviously, they had the. I think the offense. I mean, fair play to Kellen Moore getting what he could out of that offense, because this offense again is similar to what it was 2 years ago now, where it's just not reliable. It's crazy. They just have, but Nick Sirianni showing how good of a head coach he is. He can mask all those problems and win these close games against good teams. So it's just hopefully they don't collapse this year like they did 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I think as well, you've got to give huge credit to the defense this year. They've,
Lost so
in the
many
last
guys.
in the last 3 weeks, they've kept teams to a combined, like 40 points, I think. Like we was talking about Green Bay earlier, they kept Green Bay to 7 points. They kept the Lions to 9 points. Like those are legit performances that make you sit up and think, this is a genuine unit. Question marks obviously going to have to be asked about the collapsing at Dallas. But you come out, you win this game against the Bears, and I think those questions go away. Is when it's a bit like we said with Dallas, like if they ended up going on a run after that kind of half time, you look back at that as a swing point. I think it's the same with Philadelphia. If you come out, you win this game comprehensively, or even if you put the game to bed, it doesn't have to be convincing. You win the game, the questions go away. I think people kind of snap back into it, and it's like, the Eagles are going to probably be the 1 seed in the NFC or the 2 seed, and they're in a good spot. You lose this game, the Bears have a lot of momentum going into their stretch. You've then all of a sudden gone from 21-0 up to Dallas at half time to losing to Dallas, now losing to the Bears at home. And then you go, you've got to go play the Chargers, the Bills on the road the rest of the way this year. So there is stuff riding on this game, really, but I also think that there's so much surrounding this team that doesn't reflect how good they are.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, if they win this game, then you put all those narratives to bed, and you're pretty much a playoff team if you win this game.
I mean, this game's like a narrative busting team for whoever wins it. These teams have, obviously the Bears haven't beat anyone, but the Patriots haven't beat anyone. Easiest schedule in the league. That's why you got 8 or in the Patriots case 10 wins. And Philadelphia have beaten everyone, but I've got so much drama. It's great. It's a great game. Eagles, as you expect, are favourites. They're favored by 6.5 points. How are you feeling about that spread?
Yeah, I think I picked Chicago to cover, just because of how close their games have been this season. They have pretty much, I think 90% of their games have been one-score games. So it would be silly not to pick them to cover. But I just had a glance at their schedule the rest of the way. Drop this game to Philly, you then got to go on the road to Green Bay. You then, you get a bit of a freebie against the Browns, but then you got to play Green Bay again on the road to San Francisco, and then you play the Lions. Like, that's a true gauntlet for this young team, this team that I think will know a lot about the Chicago Bears come Monday after week 18. Like, if they're still are the 3 seed, I think they're a legit team by then, or even if they're they could probably be the 2 seed by then. If they end up winding up, feasibly they could go 1-5 down the stretch, and if that happens, then I think there are a lot more questions than answers, and it's just another step on the progression of this team, and they're maybe not quite as far along as they think they are. So there's a huge amount riding on this game for Chicago. I think, you come out of this with a win. You've got an innumerable amount of momentum to carry into that road trip against Green Bay, which was huge. Start to wane a little bit, like a bit like the Patriots. We've beat up on bad teams. We've not beat up convincingly on bad teams either. We've been in one-score games against bad teams, and we're losing to good teams. And I think it'll be really interesting how that narrative plays out. In the weeks after this game, especially with Chicago's schedule coming up. But I think I'd pick them to cover on 6.5 point spread.
Me too. I think the Eagles probably win, but I have a feeling this could come down to like a field goal or something, as a lot of Bears games have. I'm not sure the Eagles win by 7, so I agree with you there. All right, and let's quickly finish the podcast by picking the rest of Week 13's games against the spread. I am desperately in need for a good week, as I was beaten for the second week in a row last week. My lead over the guest has been reduced to just 3 games after a strong week of Molly Darcy going 9-5. I went 6-8 on the other hand. Until 2 weeks ago, only Ben Isaacs in Week 7 had beaten me, but I'm in a bit of a rut at the moment after losing two weeks in a row. So there's a bit of a goal for you, Charlie. I am 84 and 92 on the season, and guests are 81 and 95 on the season. So it's certainly got a lot closer. And we'll start by picking the games in the 6 p.m. slate. We'll start in Carolina, where the 6-6 Panthers are coming off their Monday Night Football loss to the Niners, host the 9-2 Rams. The Rams are 10.5 point favourites on the road. Just shows going across country to play a 10 a.m. body clock time. I think that just goes to show how good the Rams are, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're a legit team. I think they're unarguably the best in the league at the moment. And I think I'd probably pick the Panthers to cover that spread. If there's anything like on Monday night against, the Niners offensively, I think they could be in deep trouble. But the Rams are a legit unit, and I think the NFC will go through so far. I think that's you can pretty confidently make that pick at this point, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Carolina to come within the 10 points as well. I just feel like, especially for the Rams, again, playing an early window game, they're not used to that. A lot of teams struggle. Obviously, we've seen the Chargers do that and then get spanked by the Jazz a couple of weeks ago. It's tough for a West Coast team to play in this early window. And again, Carolina right on the coast as well. So you're going from one coast to the other. I think the Panthers can be in most games. They probably won't win this game, but I think they can be in it. Or if the Rams get into a big lead, you can see Bryce bringing them back. And again, the Panthers defense actually played really well the other night as well. So yeah, I'm going to pick them to come within 10. All right, we'll go to Cleveland now. The Browns host the Seahawks. The Seahawks are 5.5 point favourites going into Cleveland. Shador Sanders will start once again, despite Dylan Gabriel clearing concussion protocol, which is really interesting. Obviously, I think you've got to see what you have in both quarterbacks. I don't think either are the future, but I feel like Shador. I mean, they did try to take the ball out of his hands, but he did make plays last week that I didn't think Dylan Gabriel was particularly capable of making. Either way, Seattle big favourites in this one, 5.5 point favourites on the road.
Seattle or San Fran?
Seattle. Oh, they're playing San Francisco. Oh yeah, sorry, San Francisco. Sorry, what am I on about? Yeah. I've got Seattle playing Minnesota.
There, and then when you said Seattle, I was really confused. No,
I don't know why I put Seattle in there. Yeah, San Francisco are playing Cleveland. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I went on a Mason Rudolph tangent when we did Ravens thing, so we're even. Yeah, I think the whole Shador thing is a bit. It feels quite obvious to me that they're paying people to do PR for him, like the whole Dave Feynman thing after the what was it the Ravens when he came in and looked genuinely terrible. I know that I's got
Yeah,
no
yeah.
help this, that, and the other, and the whole first team reps thing. But no, I think San Fran. What was the spread on this one? Sorry.
So San Fran favored by 5.5 points.
Yeah, I think I'd favour San Fran on that one as well. I think, yeah, Brock Purdy is on my blacklist because his fantasy showing for me last week was abysmal. When I put him in, I was like, safe bet, against the Panthers, that'll be fine. And wake up and he score what 10 fantasy points. I was
Yeah,
not
just the 4
happy.
interceptions. Yeah.
But and I think that there is, there will be question marks there because Miles Garrett, probably defensive player of the year, coming up against Purdy in that offense. But I'd favour San Fran to win by over 1.5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's gonna be an ugly game. Both defenses have played pretty well recently, actually. Just despite the Niners really missing quite a lot of guys. I think it'll be an ugly game. I just think Cleveland don't have an offense. San Fran do. That'll be the difference. I really do think that'll be a difference in the end. Okay, really big game in the AFC South now. The Colts host the Texans. If the Texans win this game, they're just one game back on the Colts, which should make a tasty finish to this division. The Colts are 4.5-point favourites in this one, obviously coming off the loss to the Chiefs. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, it's quite a huge game, especially for a 6 a.m. window. I was quite surprised. I suppose Houston hadn't beat the Jags by the time the deadline passed, but I was surprised that Broncos Commanders stayed in Sunday Night Football and this wasn't flexed into that spot. I think it's probably game of the week. And when you look at the other AFC South matchup, Jags Titans, I think this thing gets even bigger because all of a sudden Texans win this. They're all three AFC South teams are within what? Would that be 1.5 games of each other?
Yeah.
The Colts have gone from they were like 1 seed favourites 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden they're on the out. They could be the 7 seed. And I think there will be question marks over because this Texans defense is so good. And Daniel Jones has shown, against the Steelers, against KC when they turned it on defensively, that he is suspect when put in a tight spot, and if they don't hand Jonathan Taylor the ball 30 times a game, they're not the indomitable kind of unit that they've looked like. My questions come more so offensively for Houston against the Colts defense.
But yeah, we'll see just how play. Like, they've had 10 days since the last game. It sounds like he might. The report was that he might play in this game. Probably will. But yeah, no, that's the thing. I mean, Davis Mills has actually led a pretty decent offense. Nicky Collins is healthy now. They've done a run game recently. Yeah, it's just who plays the quarterback already, isn't it?
Yeah. I think I'd probably side with the Colts. They are the home team, aren't they? So I think coming off of the KC loss, I think you put down a marker, you win this game, you open that kind of gap back up from even if the Jags win, you keep that one. Would it be 1.5 game advantage over the Jags, and you kind of put a couple of questions to bed after what was a pretty disappointing loss against KC.
I'm going to Houston. I just can't pick against this defense. It is one of the best units I've seen. I think it's brilliant. It really is. And
what was
you look at
the spread in this one? Sorry.
4.5 points. It's like if I think it'd be close. Like I maybe not win the game, but I think Houston will make this one close. I think it's gonna be a low scoring game. And if anyone can neutralize Jonathan Taylor, it's his Texans defense. And if that's the case, then I think India are in a bit of bother because again they can produce the pressure needed to get to Jones. So I'm gonna go for Houston. I probably think they're gonna win the game as well. To be honest with you, I think. Honestly, I think if you can stop Jonathan Taylor, the Colts are vulnerable, and we saw that last week. in Kansas City. Okay, the Dolphins host the Saints. This one's got a bit of juice because the Dolphins have won a couple in a row. Coming off a bye, the Dolphins are still mathematically in the hunt. In fact, if they win this game, they've got the Jets next, and they could be 6-7 going into a game against Pittsburgh. The Dolphins could be at 500 in 3 weeks' time. The way their schedule is headed, which is funny. Because of that, the league sort of bought in on them the 6.5 point favourites over the Saints, coming off a bye as well, which is a big factor in that one. Which way are you going here?
I think I'm still not convinced by the Dolphins because of the games I've watched of them this season, and I think I'm not convinced by the Saints either. I think it's going to be a bit of an ugly game. You know, there's a lot of Tyler. Is it Shough?
Yeah, Shuck.
Shuck.
Yeah,
A lot of Tyler Shuck truthers out there that I see on my timeline. But
he's had one good week. The other game's not good, but one good week. I'll give him
yeah,
that.
and I think obviously you've lost some pass rush. Scott Robinson continues to develop, but outside of that, your pass rush is quite non-existent. But I still think you're probably the better team at home. I think I'm gonna go with the Saints to cover the spread. I don't think it's gonna be a pretty game, but I'd back the Dolphins to win.
Yeah, the Dolphins have got a really good tendency of beating bad teams, losing to good teams. Saints are a bad team. It's in Miami. I'm going to pick the Dolphins here, and I feel like the Saints defense are going to struggle to deal with Devon Achan as well. He's the real X factor here. If Dolphins can get Achan going, they win the game. It's simple as. Okay, another game between a terrible AFC East team and a terrible NFC South team. The Jets host the Falcons. Obviously the Jets starting Tyrod Taylor again. The Falcons starting Kirk Cousins. Both guys into their second quarterbacks. The Falcons are 2.5 point favorites going into New York. I mean, this one's not fun, is it?
No, this is the game where they cut to red zone 3 times.
Only
The
when there's a
first
score,
one's
like
kicking
really.
turn and running it back like to the opposition 30. Yeah, there's like one kick that's like blocked and returned for like 2 points, and like in the end the Falcons come out like 14-6 winners. I think this like this is the game you would not see at all on red zone this in the 6 a.m. window. And I think we'll all be glad for it. But given the spread, I think I think I'll take the Falcons.
I'll go. I'll go for the Jets. I actually feel like in recent weeks they started playing really well. The defense has really stepped up actually in recent weeks. And I feel like they're probably the better coached team. I think the Falcons are horrendously coached. So yeah, give me the Jets here. Sticking with an NFC South team, the Bucks. Again, really in need of a win here, but we're unsure about Baker Mayfield's status after he injured his left shoulder in their loss to the Rams on Sunday Night Football. The backup is Teddy Bridgewater in this game. Vegas still fancying the Bucks, 3.5 point favourites over the Cardinals. Here, how do you feel about this one?
Teddy two gloves against Jacoby Brissett is
Who has been wearing two gloves recently as well?
Yeah, this is NFL heritage. Yeah, have the Bucks more or less got the NFC South wrapped up?
No, because the Panthers are only half a game back.
Yeah,
it's and they've got to play them twice as well. Like the Bucks are in a bit of a danger here.
Brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals are a funny team. I can't work out the Cardinals. Like, I think they're losing a lot of close games. And then they have their odd week where they just turn up and are dreadful and get blown out. But I think Tampa Bay are probably too strong defensively for this Cardinals unit. What was the spread?
3.5 points.
Yeah, I think I cover I'd back Tampa to win by more than 3.5. I think.
Yeah, ugly game. Bucks win it at home. I think that's pretty much what I've got vibe wise. And the final game of the 6 p.m. slate, the 1-10 Titans host the 7-4 Jags. Again, if the Jags win this game, they could be level on record with the Indianapolis Colts. Should obviously the Colts lose to the Texans, the AFC South is getting really tasty now. The Jags are 6.5 point favorites going to Tennessee.
Um, I think I back the Jags to cover that. I think they've last week there were a couple of throws where I thought Trevor Lawrence probably should have done better on them.
He's a problem. Like it's funny because they've got 7 wins, and I think their quarterback has really been a problem, which shows how good their run game and their pass rush
Yeah,
has been.
he's a funny quarterback where he's good enough for a middling team. I don't think he's good enough to get you over the hump and take you on a deep playoff run. Um, but the Titans are a bad team. They managed to keep it close against the Seahawks
But I say, look
somehow.
for some growth. Like Campbell's best game of the he was really good last week.
Yeah, and but I think their tank season's on for the Titans. You get the number one pick, and then you hope that some of these quarterbacks in college show something down the stretch, so that you can kind of auction off that number one pick. And I think I'd probably back the Titans to cover the spread, because I'm not wholly convinced by the Jags. But I could also completely see this being like a 17-point blowout, and
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence making me look silly.
Yeah, this one's tough for me as well. If it was 4.5, I'd go for the Jags, but like a whole touchdown. I'll go the other way. I will go for Jacksonville, I think. But again, I'm not confident because I don't trust them one bit, and I don't trust Trevor Lawrence one bit either. Okay, we'll go to the Lake slate now. We'll go to Seattle this time. Seattle are 10.5 point favorites over the Vikings. Yeah, not the Niners, the Seattle Seahawks. Again, one of the best teams in the league, favored by 10.5 points against a team that are really struggling and a quarterback who is turnover prone.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are quite a strong team. I think they done through 4 picks, and they still needed a last minute missed field goal to lose to the Rams. Like this is another legit team. I think a good team is going to beat up on a bad team, get a conference win that's going to hugely help their seeding when it comes to it at crunch time. And I think I'm going to take the Seahawks here, just because I think Darnold, he had that really bad week against the Vikings, the Rams, and everyone was a bit like he's seeing ghosts again. Not a good sign, but I can't look past the fact that was against a good team. Like we said, the Rams probably were favourites for the one seed in the NFC, and it still came down to a missed field goal at the end.
It's gonna be a tough one.
The Vikings are a bad team.
It's gonna be a tough one for Vikings fans to watch if Donald does have a game, because you're thinking, what could have been. There.
I mean, we're not going to see JJ McCarthy, so everyone wins.
Yeah, exactly. Concussion protocol. Yeah.
No one has to watch him.
Yeah. Brian Flores. I feel like he could really put a blueprint out for, again, not a blueprint because it's already there. You make Donald hold onto the ball for longer, and that's the issue. Like that's what the Rams did. That's what the Lions did last year in week 18. Like you make Donald hold on to the ball for as long as possible. I feel like Brian Flores is obviously genius defensive play caller, but if it is Max Brosmer playing for Minnesota, like give me Seattle. give me Seattle here. I think it could be sneaky close because again I feel like Flores could have a game, but I just thought Seattle were, I think again top 5 defense, top 5 offense in a lot of metrics. This is a complete team. They should win this game by multiple scores, so I'm going to back them to do that. Okay, we'll go to the AFC West now. The Chargers coming off a bye host the Raiders, who are in disarray. They fired OC Chip Kelly, who was the highest paid offensive coordinator after just one season. So their new OC is Greg Olson, who was the offensive coordinator under John Gruden between 2018 and 2021. So obviously got familiarity with some of these players. He will take over in the interim. I mean, yeah, AFC West game, anything could happen, but you'd like to think the Chargers could cover the 9.5-point spread against this Raiders team, right?
Yeah, I mean the Raiders defense they're not good, but they're sneaky good at the same time. Like,
I say Max Crosby
watching,
could kill one of these backup offensive tackles for the Chargers.
Yeah.
That is a concern.
Yeah, and like what's his name on the other side? Wilson.
Tyree Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, Tyree Wilson. On the other side, I think they're a decent little 1-2 duo against this banged up O line. And I think I'm not wholly convinced by the Chargers after their loss to the Jags, like you said. Yeah, there was the factor of going to play an early window game, being a West Coast team, like that will play into it. But I've seen things like this Raiders stuff under Pete Carroll this year. I think they'll be in a good place when they can build some talent on this team through the draft. But I'm not I'm not encouraged enough by the Chargers to back them to cover this spread. I think I'll take the Raiders to cover.
Wow.
And I just think, I mean, the bye week might do some things. And Marion Hampton, trending to return for the Chargers, but just not convinced by them as a unit enough to back them to cover 9.5 points against the Raiders. And again, I think it'll just be close because I think division games usually are close.
Yeah, I get that. I just think I personally think the Raiders are probably worst team in the league, other than the Titans, in my opinion. They've just been so mistake heavy on both sides of the ball. Again, turnover differential really not great for them either. And again, I like the Chargers defense. So yeah, I don't know. I see what you mean. Again, division game, but again, just Harbaugh out of a bye. I kind of can't really pick against that in my opinion. And then the sort of main game in the late slate sees the Steelers host the Bills. Huge game in the AFC playoff pitch. Obviously, both teams in and around the wild card spots. It sounds like Aaron Rodgers will return for this game, but obviously the Bills are still favourites, favored by 3.5 points. Yeah, this one has a feel of a early Saturday wildcard game, doesn't it? With how big it is, and again they've played each other quite a lot of times in the playoffs as well. These two teams.
Yeah, and in that vein, I think I could see the Bills winning this, like they won their early Saturday playoff game against the Broncos last year and blowing the Steelers out.
Yeah, I agree with you.
A blowout. I think the Bills will cover the 3.5 points. I think it's quite generous to Pittsburgh.
James Cook could be going for a field day against the Steelers defense, which again can't really tackle guys in the open space. Also, terrible pass defense. So look for whoever the hell the Bills receivers are in this game. Obviously, Khalil Shakir's had a bit of a situation, and there's Keon Coleman's had a bit of a situation. They've signed Brandon Cooks in the week. Obviously, Gabe Davis is back. Whoever the hell suits up for the Bills, maybe that's a bit nice for the Steelers. But I just think they're a better team. And again, if you can get James Cook going, you're probably going to win this game. So yeah, give me Buffalo minus 3.5 points, and then we'll go on to the 2 primes. I'm going Sunday Night Football sees the 3-8 Commanders host the 9-2 Broncos. The Broncos are 6.5 point favourites going into Washington. Both teams coming off a bye. Obviously, Denver have hardly played over the last couple of weeks, which is quite an interesting little nugget there. And yeah, 6.5 point favourites. They should get the job done. It's just whether they win by a score, by a touchdown or not.
Yeah, we went from playing every other day, e- either playing to playing twice in 23 days, or once in 23 days. I can't remember what. Yeah, possibly once in 23 days actually. After going off the mini bye from Thursday to playing KC. And but I, I think I saw some things against KC that I really liked, but the problem with the kind of Sean Payton Bonick thing recently has been that every week we've played and there's been things that you've liked, they then go and do the complete opposite the week after.
The way your offense starts
Or,
games is a worry for me. I
yeah,
think
you say that though, but we started really well against the Chiefs.
yeah,
We went down. We had the long drive down the red zone. Admit. So like I said, the last week we were really good to start the game. So this week we'll probably won't score through 3 quarters. It just seems to be how it goes. Don't know whether it's Sean Payton trying to be the smartest man in the room, whether it's that things on the scripted plays don't. Bo Nix tries to play hero ball. I've been in the building; it's hard to tell, but the defense can shut down Mariota and a pretty banged up Commanders offense, and that Bo Nix can do enough to win this game pretty comfortably. I think I'd back us to probably cover the spreads, win by a touchdown, if not more. My only concern is the fact it's on the road, and we haven't looked wholly convincing on the road compared to at home this season.
Interesting. I'm going to go with you as well. I think Washington can make this one I don't think they're going to get blown out. I think the defense actually played really well in Dan Quinn's first game calling plays in Madrid. Defense was much better than it had been, which I'm a little bit concerned about. But Denver should be able to win this game by a touchdown, so I'm going to pick them here. And then Monday Night Football, great game. This 10-2 Patriots hosted 2-10 New York Giants. But obviously, Jameis Winston makes everything fun. So if it is him again, that would be fun. If not, two young quarterbacks dueling, so it has its appeal. The Patriots are 7.5 point favourites in this game. Sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really funny that the Giants are the only team eliminated from playoff contention.
Yeah.
And how does that work? Like the Titans are 1-10. I guess that extra game matters, but
they're probably still in AFC South. Right, if you actually think about it, they're probably no, because the Cubs got 8 wins. That's impossible. How does that work? No. I assume it's because the wild card teams have 7 wins, so theoretically everyone could lose, and the Titans could go 7-10.
Yeah, I suppose. But anyway, I think you'd probably back the Patriots to cover that spread just because they've looked, like we said, they've beat up on bad teams. Everyone's spoken enough about their schedule. Like, they had a pretty much a cakewalk, other than I think they play the Bills and the Ravens on the road back to back in a couple of weeks' time. But they should win this pretty comfortably. The Giants have looked pretty good since firing Daboll, or they've looked improved since firing Daboll. But again, they can't close out wins. There was a thing. I think there was one of the many NFL pages that most people follow on Instagram, and it had all the list of Giants being up like 24-8 or 21-9 and they lose all the games, and it's like they have an incredible knack of stealing a loss from the jaws of victory. I don't think they'll ever have the chance to get into that position as Patriots, because Patriots are too good of a team. And yeah, I'd back them to cover that spread, I think.
Yeah, I'm going for New England too. Right, that's going to do it for today's episode. I just want to say a big thank you to you, Charlie, for joining me again this afternoon. Great to have you back on the pod again. Do you want to let listeners know where they can find your work?
Yeah, it's just www.full10yards.co.uk, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let me just double check. Yeah, I think .co.uk. If you go on the Twitter feed or the X feed, full 10 yards, I think the link's in the description in there as well. We obviously pop all the articles we do up on the X feed as well. And yeah, we're trying to get more stuff on the website in the coming weeks, hopefully in playoffs as well. Going to try and start doing stuff, hopefully, semi-daily. And just, in a podcast that comes out once a week. And it just gives a bit of a different perspective as well, I suppose. But yeah, so keep an eye out. I'll retweet anything that I post as well on my Twitter feed, which is tagged under my face there. And yeah, hopefully we'll be able to grow the website a little bit so that it pops up on your feed without having to search for it soon enough.
Awesome, man. Yeah, cheers for coming on, and yeah, looking forward to all that in the future. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving us a quick rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps more NFL fans discover the pod here in the UK and beyond. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you never miss any of our coverage. It might be a little while before I see any of you guys on our next podcast, maybe 10 or 11 days or so. I'm not really sure. I'm moving this weekend and then I'm starting a new job next week. So got to squeeze everything in alongside that. So it might be a week 14 recap rather than the week 14 preview, but I'm gonna try and do at least one a week for the rest of the season. But yeah, no, enjoy your Thanksgiving football, enjoy your Sunday, and I'll see you soon. It's been Sam Moores, Charlie Race as well. It's been the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, and we'll see you next time.